The taste of tequila burned my throat as I knocked back another shot, the world around me blurring into a kaleidoscope of neon lights and pulsing bodies. Music throbbed through the packed bar, but all I could hear was the echo of my own stupid words from earlier that night. "Hey, weakling. Keep an eye on me in the corner, will ya?" What kind of person says that to the man they're supposed to marry in just a few weeks? The answer was staring back at me in the grimy bathroom mirror. A selfish, immature girl who didn't deserve the love of someone as good as Jake. I splashed some water on my face, trying to sober up enough to fix this mess. As I stumbled back out into the bar, my eyes scanning the crowd for Jake's familiar face, a sinking feeling in my gut told me it might already be too late. My name is Mia Callahan, and this is the story of how I nearly destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. It all started 3 years ago, on a perfect summer day at the Morgan County Fair. The air was thick with the scent of funnel cakes and cotton candy, punctuated by the excited shrieks from the rickety old roller coaster. I was 22, fresh out of college, and feeling on top of the world as I strolled through the fairgrounds with my best friend Lily. "Come on, Mia." Lily tugged on my arm, pointing towards a brightly colored booth. "Let's try the ring toss. I bet I can win that giant stuffed unicorn." I laughed, allowing her to pull me along. "You know those games are rigged, right? You'd have better luck finding a real unicorn." As we approached the booth, I rummaged in my pocket for some cash, only to feel my stomach drop. My wallet was gone. "Crap," I muttered, patting my pockets frantically. "Lily, I think I lost my wallet. We need to retrace our steps." Just as panic was starting to set in, I heard a deep, hesitant voice behind me. "Oh, excuse me. I think you dropped this." I turned around and found myself face to face with the most gorgeous pair of blue eyes I'd ever seen. They belonged to a tall, broad-shouldered guy about my age, with tousled brown hair and a shy smile that made my heart skip a beat. In his outstretched hand was my missing wallet. "Oh my God, thank you," I exclaimed, relief washing over me as I took the wallet. "I can't believe you found it. I'm Mia, by the way." His smile widened, revealing a dimple in his left cheek that I immediately found adorable. "I'm Jake Thompson. Nice to meet you, Mia." There was a moment of awkward silence as we just stood there, smiling at each other like idiots. Lily cleared her throat loudly, snapping me out of my daze. "Oh, this is my friend Lily," I said, gesturing to her. We were just about to try the ring toss. "Want to join us?" Jake's eyes lit up. "Sure, I'd love to. Fair warning though, I'm pretty terrible at these games." As it turned out, Jake wasn't exaggerating. His first few attempts at the ring toss were so wildly off target that I couldn't help but giggle. He took it in good humor, laughing along with us. All right, he said, picking up his last ring. "This one's for all the marbles. Mia, would you do me the honor of blowing on it for luck?" I raised an eyebrow, amused by his theatrics. "You know that's not actually a thing, right?" Jake shrugged, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Humor me." Rolling my eyes, I leaned in and blew gently on the ring. Jake's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I felt a spark of electricity between us. Then he turned and tossed the ring with a flourish. To all our surprise, it landed perfectly around the neck of a bottle. "No way," Lily exclaimed as the booth operator handed Jake a small stuffed penguin. Jake turned to me with a grin, holding out the penguin. "For you, my lucky charm." I took the penguin, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "Thanks. I think I'll name him Jake Jr." We spent the rest of the day together, the three of us riding the Ferris wheel, sharing funnel cakes, and talking about everything under the sun. I learned that Jake had just graduated with a degree in engineering and was starting a job at a local firm in a few weeks. He was smart, funny, and refreshingly down to earth. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Jake turned to me with a nervous smile. "So, would it be okay if I got your number? Maybe we could grab coffee sometime." My heart did a little flip. "I'd like that," I said, trying to keep my voice casual as we exchanged numbers. That night, as I lay in bed clutching Jake Jr. the penguin, I couldn't stop smiling. I had a feeling my life was about to change in a big way. Over the next few weeks, Jake and I texted constantly. Our coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into a movie night, which turned into spending every free moment together. It was like we'd known each other for years instead of weeks. One night, about a month after we met, we were walking through the park after dinner when Jake suddenly stopped, turning to face me with a serious expression. "Mia," he said, taking both my hands in his. "I know this might seem fast, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. Would you be my girlfriend?" I felt like my heart might burst with happiness. "Yes," I breathed, standing on my tiptoes to kiss him. "Yes, I'd love to be your girlfriend, Jake." As our lips met, fireworks exploded in my chest. It was the kind of kiss you read about in romance novels, passionate, tender, and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I knew I never wanted to kiss anyone else ever again. The next 3 years were like something out of a fairy tale. Jake was everything I'd ever dreamed of in a partner, kind, supportive, and unfailingly loyal. He was there for me through every up and down, from celebrating my promotion at work to holding me as I cried after my grandmother passed away. But as time went on, I started to notice little things that grated on my nerves. Jake was wonderful, but he could be frustratingly oblivious sometimes. I'd drop hints about things I wanted or needed, and they'd just sail right over his head. Like the time I spent weeks talking about how much I loved the idea of surprise romantic gestures, hoping he'd plan something special for our anniversary. When the day came, and he just gave me a card and took me to our usual restaurant, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. "Did you like dinner?" Jake asked as we walked home, his arm around my shoulders. I forced a smile. "Yeah, it was nice." He frowned, sensing my tone. "Is something wrong?" I sighed, frustrated that I had to spell it out for him. "It's just, I kind of hoped you might have planned something a little more special for our anniversary. You know, like a surprise or something." Jake's face fell. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mia. I didn't realize. Why didn't you just tell me that's what you wanted?" "Because then it wouldn't be a surprise." I snapped, immediately regretting my harsh tone. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to be ungrateful. Sometimes I wish you could read me a little better, you know." Jake pulled me closer, kissing the top of my head. "I'll try to do better, I promise. I love you, Mia." "I love you too," I murmured, pushing down the nagging feeling of discontent. As our 3rd anniversary approached, I found myself growing increasingly restless. Don't get me wrong, I loved Jake with all my heart, but a small part of me couldn't help but wonder if there was something more out there. Something exciting and passionate, like in the romance novels I secretly devoured. It didn't help that all our friends seemed to be getting engaged or married. Every time I saw another diamond ring on Facebook, I felt a pang of envy. I'd been dropping hints about marriage for months, but Jake seemed content to keep things as they were. Then came that fateful night at the bar, just a few weeks before what was supposed to be our wedding day. Jake had finally proposed in the most Jake way possible, sweet, sincere, and completely lacking the grand romantic gesture I'd always dreamed of. But I'd said yes, of course. How could I not? We were out celebrating with friends, and I'd had a few too many tequila shots. As we walked into the bar, I saw a group of guys checking me out. A spark of mischief, and maybe a hint of resentment, made me turn to Jake with a teasing smile. "Hey, weakling, keep an eye on me in the corner, will ya?" The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. Jake's face fell, hurt and confusion clouding his blue eyes. "Mia, what the hell?" he muttered, his voice barely audible over the thumping music. I tried to backtrack, to explain that I was just joking, but the damage was done. Jake retreated into himself, nursing his beer silently, while I chatted with our friends, my stomach churning with guilt. That night, as we lay in bed, the silence between us was deafening. I turned to face Jake, his profile illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlight filtering through our curtains. "I'm sorry," I whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. I didn't mean it. You know I love you. Jake sighed, still staring at the ceiling. Do you, Mia? Sometimes I wonder. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. What's that supposed to mean? Jake finally turned to look at me, his eyes filled with a sadness that broke my heart. It means I'm not blind, Mia. I see the way you look at other couples, the disappointment in your eyes when I don't live up to whatever romantic ideal you have in your head. I'm trying my best here, but I'm starting to think it's not enough for you. Tears welled up in my eyes. Jake, no, that's not true. I love you just the way you are. He reached out, gently wiping away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. I love you too, Mia. More than anything. But love shouldn't be this hard, should it? Maybe we need to take a step back and really think about what we both want. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Was he breaking up with me? What are you saying? Jake sat up, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I'm saying that maybe we rushed into this engagement. Maybe we need some time to figure out if this is really what we both want. I sat up too, panic rising in my chest. Jake, please. I made a stupid mistake. I was drunk and being an idiot. You can't throw away 3 years over one dumb comment. He shook his head, a sad smile on his face. It's not just about tonight, Mia. It's about all the little moments where I feel like I'm not enough for you. I think we both need some space to figure things out. With that, he got up and started getting dressed. I watched in stunned silence as he packed an overnight bag. Where are you going? I asked, my voice small and scared. I'm going to stay with my brother for a few days, Jake said, not meeting my eyes. I think we both need some time to think. As the door closed behind him, I felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? The next few days were a blur of tears, unanswered texts, and sleepless nights. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the gaping hole Jake had left in my life. But everywhere I looked, there were reminders of him. His coffee mug in the kitchen, his sweatshirt draped over a chair, the framed photo of us at the fair where we first met. It was a week after our fight that my life took another unexpected turn. I was grabbing lunch at a new cafe that opened near my office, desperately in need of a change of scenery. As I waited in line, I couldn't help but overhear the man in front of me muttering to himself. Like petals unfurling in the morning sun, she blossoms, unaware of her own radiance. Intrigued, I tapped him on the shoulder. Excuse me, but was that poetry? It sounded beautiful. The man turned around, and I found myself face to face with the most intense pair of brown eyes I'd ever seen. They belonged to a tall, lean man with artfully tousled dark hair and a 5 o'clock shadow that gave him a rugged, artistic look. He smiled, and I felt a little flutter in my stomach. As a matter of fact, it was. I'm working on a new piece for my students. I'm Nathan Brooks, by the way. I teach literature and creative writing at the community college. Mia Callahan, I replied, shaking his offered hand. I work in marketing, but I've always loved literature. Your students are lucky to have such a passionate teacher. Nathan's eyes lit up. A fellow literature lover. Tell me, Mia, who's your favorite author? Before I knew it, we were deep in conversation about books, poetry, and life. We ended up sharing a table, our sandwiches forgotten as we dove into passionate discussions about everything from Shakespeare to modern pop culture. As we talked, I couldn't help but notice how different Nathan was from Jake. Where Jake was solid and dependable, Nathan was all passion and intensity. He gestured wildly as he spoke, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I found myself hanging on his every word, drawn in by his charisma and intelligence. You know, Nathan said, leaning in conspiratorially, I'm hosting a poetry reading at the bookstore down the street this Friday evening. You should come. I think you'd really enjoy it. I hesitated for a moment, thinking of Jake. We still hadn't really talked things through. But then I remembered that he was the one who said we needed space. What harm could there be in attending a poetry reading? That sounds great, I said with a smile. I'd love to come. As I walked back to my office, my head was spinning. For the first time in days, I wasn't thinking about Jake or our fight. Instead, my mind was filled with snippets of poetry and the memory of Nathan's intense gaze. I told myself it was innocent, just a new friend who shared my interests. But deep down, I knew I was playing with fire. The next few days passed in a blur of work and stolen moments with Nathan. We'd accidentally bump into each other at the cafe, or I'd find reasons to stop by the bookstore where he taught his evening classes. Each time, the spark between us grew stronger. Jake and I were talking again, but things were still strained. He was giving me the space I'd always complained about wanting, but now that I had it, I wasn't sure I liked it. Our conversations were polite but distant, nothing like the easy intimacy we'd shared before. Friday evening arrived. I found myself standing outside the small, cozy bookstore where Nathan's poetry reading was being held. I'd agonize over what to wear, finally settling on a flowy summer dress that Jake had always said brought out the green in my eyes. As I walked in, the bell above the door tinkling softly, I saw Nathan at the front of the room, setting up a microphone. He looked up as I entered, a broad smile spreading across his face. "Mia, you made it," he said, crossing the room to greet me. "I was hoping you'd come." I felt a little thrill at his words. I wouldn't have missed it. This place is adorable, by the way. Nathan nodded, looking around fondly. "It's my second home. Come on, I saved you a seat up front." As I settled into my chair, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and guilt. I should be at home, trying to fix things with Jake. Instead, I was here, heart racing as I waited to hear Nathan's poetry. The reading was magical. Nathan's words painted vivid pictures of love, loss, and everything in between. His voice, rich and emotive, sent shivers down my spine. When he read a particularly passionate love poem, his eyes locked with mine, and I felt a jolt of electricity that left me breathless. After the reading, as a small crowd mingled and chatted, Nathan made his way over to me. "So, what did you think?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I beamed at him, still feeling a bit breathless from the intensity of his performance. "It was incredible, Nathan. Your words, they're so powerful. I felt like I was right there in each scene you described." A pleased smile spread across his face. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. Listen, a few of us are going to grab a drink at the bar next door to celebrate. Would you like to join us?" I hesitated for a moment, thinking of Jake. We hadn't made any plans for the evening, but I still felt a twinge of guilt at the thought of going out for drinks with another man. But then I remembered that Jake was the one who wanted space. What was the harm in having a friendly drink? "Sure, that sounds great," I heard myself say. The bar was dimly lit and cozy, with dark wood paneling and soft jazz playing in the background. I found myself wedged into a small booth between Nathan and one of his colleagues, acutely aware of the warmth of Nathan's leg pressed against mine. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed, I found myself laughing more than I had in weeks. Nathan was witty and charming, always ready with a clever quip or an interesting anecdote. His friends were equally engaging, and I felt myself being drawn into their world of literature and art. It was nearly midnight when Nathan leaned in close, his breath warm on my ear. "Want to get some air?" I nodded, suddenly feeling overheated. We made our excuses to the group and stepped out into the cool night air. The street was quiet, with just a few people strolling by under the glow of the streetlights. Nathan turned to me, his eyes intense in the dim light. "I'm really glad you came tonight, Mia. There's something about you. I feel I have known you for years, not days." I felt a flutter in my stomach at his words. "I know what you mean. It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes you just click with someone." He took a step closer, and I could smell the faint scent of his cologne mixed with the whiskey on his breath. "Very strange," he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. I knew what was about to happen. I knew I should step back, tell him about Jake, put an end to whatever this was before it went too far. But I didn't. Instead, I tilted my face up to his, my heart pounding in my chest. Nathan's lips met mine in a kiss that was nothing like Jake's. Where Jake was gentle and familiar, Nathan was all passion and urgency. his hand tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as he deepened the kiss. I gasped against his mouth, my body responding with a heat that both thrilled and terrified me. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, reality came crushing back. What had I done? Nathan, I started, not even sure what I was going to say. He pressed a finger to my lips, silencing me. Share. Don't overthink it, Mia. Just feel. And God help me, I wanted to. I wanted to lose myself in Nathan's passion, to forget about all the complications in my life. But as I looked into his eyes, all I could see was Jake's hurt expression the night of our fight. I took a step back, wrapping my arms around myself. I can't do this, Nathan. I'm engaged. Nathan's expression shifted from desire to surprise, then to something that looked a lot like disappointment tinged with respect. I see. I wish you had told me sooner, but I understand. I'm sorry, I said, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I should go. I turned and hurried down the street, not looking back, even as I heard Nathan call my name. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and guilt. What kind of person was I, to kiss another man when I was engaged? To even consider throwing away 3 years with Jake for a moment of passion with a virtual stranger? When I got home, I half expected to find Jake waiting for me, ready to confront me about where I'd been. But the apartment was dark and empty, just as I'd left it. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands as the tears finally came. I cried for the mess I'd made of things, for the hurt I knew I would cause Jake if he ever found out, and for the small part of me that wished I was still in Nathan's arms. When I finally dragged myself to bed, exhausted and emotionally drained, I made a resolution. I would fix things with Jake. I would be the fiancé he deserved, passionate and attentive. I would forget all about Nathan Brooks and his intoxicating poetry. But as I drifted off to sleep, Nathan's words echoed in my mind. Don't overthink it, Mia. Just feel. Little did I know, those words would haunt me in the weeks to come, as I tried desperately to reconcile my growing feelings for Nathan with my love for Jake. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a heart full of guilt. The events of the previous night came rushing back, and I groaned, burying my face in my pillow. How could I have let things go so far with Nathan? I reached for my phone, half hoping to see a message from Jake, but there was nothing. We'd barely spoken in the past week, and the distance between us felt insurmountable. I knew I needed to make things right, but I had no idea where to start. As I shuffled into the kitchen to make coffee, my eyes fell on a framed photo of Jake and me at the beach last summer. We looked so happy, so in love. When had things started to go wrong? I spent the weekend alternating between wallowing in guilt and trying to work up the courage to call Jake. By Sunday evening, I still hadn't made any progress on either front. Just as I was considering ordering takeout and binge-watching rom-coms to distract myself, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jake. Can we talk? Meet me at our spot in the park in an hour. My heart leaped into my throat. Our spot was a secluded bench overlooking the duck pond where we'd had our first kiss. Whatever Jake wanted to discuss, it was serious. I arrived at the park early, my stomach in knots as I perched on the edge of the bench. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the path. It was a beautiful day, but I could barely appreciate it through my anxiety. I heard Jake's footsteps before I saw him. He rounded the corner, looking as handsome as ever in jeans and a simple blue t-shirt that brought out his eyes. My heart ached at the sight of him. "Hi," I said softly as he sat down beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. "Hi, Mia," he replied, his voice gentle but guarded. "Thanks for meeting me." There was an awkward silence as we both struggled to find the right words. Finally, Jake took a deep breath and turned to face me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past week," he began. "About us, about our relationship, about what I want for the future." I held my breath, terrified of what he might say next. Was this it? Was he ending things for good? But then Jake did something that took me completely by surprise. He slid off the bench and onto one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Mia Callahan, he said, his voice trembling slightly. I know things have been rough between us lately. I know I'm not always the best at showing you how much you mean to me. But this past week without you has been hell, and it's made me realize something. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the sunlight and sparkled brilliantly. I don't want to live another day without you by my side. You're the love of my life, Mia. Will you marry me? For real this time, no take-backs or timeouts. Just you and me forever. I stared at Jake in shock, tears welling up in my eyes. This was everything I'd ever wanted. A romantic, surprise proposal in our special place. But all I could think about was Nathan's kiss, the guilt gnawing at my insides. Jake, I started, my voice choked with emotion. But before I could say anything more, a small crowd had gathered around us, drawn by the romantic scene. They were all smiling, some even taking pictures with their phones. I could feel their expectant eyes on me, waiting for the happily ever after moment. In that instant, I made a decision that would change the course of our lives. I pushed down the guilt, the confusion, the lingering thoughts of Nathan. I focused on Jake, sweet, dependable Jake who loved me enough to plan this beautiful moment. Yes, I heard myself say, a smile spreading across my face even as my heart twisted with conflict. Yes, I'll marry you, Jake. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as Jake slipped the ring onto my finger and pulled me in for a kiss. As our lips met, I tried to recapture the spark, the passion we once shared. But all I could think about was how different it felt from kissing Nathan. As Jake hugged me tightly, whispering I love you in my ear, I caught sight of a familiar figure over his shoulder. Nathan was standing at the edge of the small crowd, a bouquet of flowers in his hand, and a look of utter devastation on his face. Our eyes met for a brief, charged moment before he turned and walked away, disappearing into the gathering twilight. My heart raced, torn between the joy of the moment with Jake and the undeniable pull I felt towards Nathan. What had I done? And more importantly, what was I going to do now? The next few weeks were a whirlwind of wedding planning and forced smiles. Jake was over the moon, throwing himself into preparations with an enthusiasm that only made me feel guiltier. Every time he asked my opinion on flowers or color schemes, I felt like a fraud. I tried to convince myself that I'd made the right choice. Jake was stable, loving, and committed. We had history, a life built together. What I felt for Nathan was just infatuation, a fleeting passion that would fade with time. But no matter how much I tried to focus on Jake and our future, I couldn't get Nathan out of my head. I found myself making excuses to walk past the bookstore where he taught, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. I reread the poems he'd shared at the reading, imagining his voice speaking the words directly to me. It all came to a head about a month after Jake's proposal. I was having lunch at our usual cafe when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Mia? I turned to find Nathan standing there, looking as handsome and intense as ever. My heart skipped a beat. Nathan, I said, hating the breathless quality of my voice. Hi. He gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I join you? I knew I should say no. I knew the smart thing, the right thing, would be to politely decline and leave. But instead, I heard myself say, please sit. As Nathan settled into the chair, I couldn't help but notice how his presence seemed to electrify the air around us. We sat in charged silence for a moment before he spoke. I saw the proposal, he said quietly. Congratulations. I twisted the engagement ring on my finger, suddenly feeling like it weighed a ton. Thank you, I mumbled, unable to meet his eyes. Nathan leaned forward, his gaze intense. Are you happy, Mia? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I should be. I was marrying a wonderful man who loved me. But as I looked into Nathan's eyes, I felt a longing that I couldn't ignore. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Nathan reached across the table, taking my hand in his. The touch sent sparks shooting up my arm. Life's too short for, I don't know, Mia. You deserve to be with someone who sets your soul on fire. I knew I should pull my hand away, but I couldn't bring myself to break the connection. Nathan, I can't. Jake is a lucky man, Nathan interrupted gently. But is he the right man? Before I could respond, Nathan stood up. I have a class to teach. But Mia, if you ever want to talk, really talk, you know where to find me. As I watched him walk away, I felt like I was being torn in two. On one side was Jake, my history, my stability, my safe harbor. On the other was Nathan, a world of passion and possibility that both thrilled and terrified me. I wish I could say that I made a clean break then and there, that I either committed fully to Jake or had the courage to end things and explore my feelings for Nathan. But the truth is messier, more complicated. Over the next few weeks, I found myself living a double life. By day, I was Jake's loving fiancé, planning our wedding and pretending everything was fine. But in stolen moments, lunch breaks, evenings when Jake worked late, I was with Nathan. We never went further than passionate kisses and long conversations about literature and life. But emotionally, I was falling deeper and deeper into an affair that I knew would destroy everything if it came to light. The guilt was eating me alive. Every time Jake smiled at me or talked excitedly about our future, I felt like the worst person in the world, but I couldn't seem to stop. The thrill of being with Nathan, of feeling truly seen and understood, was like a drug I couldn't quit. It all came crashing down on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was at the cafe with Nathan, his hand resting on mine as we talked in low voices. I was so engrossed in our conversation that I didn't notice Jake walk in until I heard the sharp intake of breath behind me. I whirled around to see Jake standing there, a bouquet of flowers in his hand and a look of utter devastation on his face. "Mia?" he said, his voice barely audible. What? What is this?" Nathan quickly pulled his hand away, but it was too late. Jake had seen everything. The flowers fell from his hand, scattering across the cafe floor as he turned and walked out into the rain. "Jake, wait," I called, jumping up from my seat and running after him. But by the time I made it outside, he was gone. I stood there in the pouring rain, mascara running down my face as I realized the full weight of what I'd done. I'd betrayed the trust of the man who loved me, all for a few stolen moments of passion. Nathan came out of the cafe, holding my purse and jacket. "Mia, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." I turned to him, anger and guilt warring inside me. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't come into my life, Jake, and I would be happy." Even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. The problems between Jake and me had started long before Nathan entered the picture. But it was easier to blame him than to face my own role in this mess. Nathan's face fell, but he didn't argue. "I understand. I'll go. But Mia, remember what I said. You deserve to be happy, truly happy, whatever that means for you." As I watched him walk away, I felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. I'd lost Jake, pushed away Nathan, and I had no one to blame but myself. I spent the next few days in a haze of misery, alternating between calling Jake, he didn't answer, and crying into a pint of ice cream. I knew I needed to fix things, but I had no idea where to start. It was Lily who finally shook me out of my funk. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, armed with a bottle of wine and a no-nonsense attitude. "All right, Mia," she said, as she poured us each a generous glass. "Spill. What the hell happened?" So I told her everything. About the fight with Jake, meeting Nathan, the kiss, the proposal, the affair. By the time I finished, the wine was gone and Lily was looking at me with a mixture of sympathy and exasperation. "Oh, Mia," she sighed. "You really made a mess of things, didn't you?" I nodded miserably. "I know. I don't know what to do, Lily. I love Jake, I do. But with Nathan, I feel, I don't know, alive." "Understood. But maybe that's just infatuation. Maybe I'm throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me for a fantasy." Lily took my hand, her expression serious. "Look, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this, you need to be honest. with Jake, with Nathan, but most importantly with yourself. What do you really want, Tamia? Her words echoed in my mind long after she left. What did I want? The safe, comfortable love I had with Jake, or the passionate, unpredictable connection I felt with Nathan? As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. It wasn't really about choosing between Jake and Nathan. It was about choosing myself. I needed to figure out who I was and what I wanted out of life before I could be a good partner to anyone. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I knew what I had to do, even though it terrified me. I started by calling Jake. To my surprise, he actually answered. "Mia," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "What do you want?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I needed to say. "Jake, I know I hurt you. I'm so sorry. Can we meet? I need to talk to you face to face." There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought he might hang up. But then he sighed, and I could almost picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was stressed. "Okay," he said finally, "meet me at our spot in the park." 1 hour. An hour later, I found myself sitting on our bench by the duck pond, my heart pounding as I waited for Jake. When he arrived, my breath caught in my throat. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a wariness in his posture that made my heart ache. "Hi," I said softly as he sat down beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. "Hi," he replied, his voice guarded. "You wanted to talk. So talk." I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. "Jake, I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for hurting you. What I did was inexcusable, and you deserve so much better." Jake nodded slightly but didn't say anything, so I continued. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about our relationship, about what went wrong. And I realized something. The problems between us started long before Nathan came into the picture." Jake's jaw tightened at the mention of Nathan's name, but he remained silent. "We've been together for so long, Jake. We'd fell into a routine, got comfortable. And somewhere along the way, I think we both lost sight of who we were as individuals. I started resenting you for not reading my mind, for not being this perfect, passionate partner I had built up in my head. And that wasn't fair to you." I paused, gathering my courage for what I needed to say next. "Jake, I love you. A part of me will always love you, but I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. And I don't think you're in love with me either, not really. We're just comfortable, safe." Jake finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "So that's it. You're choosing him?" I shook my head. "No, Jake. I'm not choosing Nathan. I'm choosing myself. I need to figure out who I am and what I want out of life before I can be a good partner to anyone. And I think maybe you need to do the same." Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the pond. When he finally turned to look at me, I was surprised to see a mix of sadness and relief in his eyes. "You know," he said slowly, "a part of me knew this was coming. Even before I saw you with him. Things haven't been right between us for a while, have they?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "No, they haven't. I'm so sorry, Jake, for everything." He reached out and took my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I'm sorry too, Mia. I should have been more attentive. Should have tried harder to understand what you needed. But you're right. We both lost ourselves somewhere along the way." We sat there in silence for a while, both lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Jake spoke again. "So what happens now?" I slipped the engagement ring off my finger and placed it in his hand. "Now we both take some time to find ourselves again. To remember who we are outside of this relationship." Jake nodded, closing his fist around the ring. "And Nathan?" I shook my head. "I'm not going to pursue anything with Nathan right now. This isn't about choosing between you two. It's about choosing myself." As we stood up to leave, Jake pulled me into a hug. It felt different from our usual embraces, a goodbye, but also a release. When we pulled apart, we were both crying, but there was also a sense of peace between us. Take care of yourself, Mia, Jake said softly. You too, Jake, I replied, watching as he walked away. As I made my way home, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. Ending things with Jake was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I knew it was the right choice for both of us. The next day, I went to the bookstore where Nathan taught. I found him in his usual spot, grading papers at a small table in the back. Mia, he said, surprise and hope mingling in his voice as he saw me. I didn't expect to see you here. I sat down across from him, my heart racing. Nathan, I need to tell you something. I explained everything. My conversation with Jake, our breakup, my decision to focus on myself. As I spoke, I saw the hope in Nathan's eyes slowly fade, replaced by understanding and a touch of sadness. So, he said when I finished, I guess this is goodbye. I nodded, feeling a pang in my chest. For now, at least, I need to figure out who I am without Jake, without jumping into something new. I hope you can understand. Nathan reached across the table, taking my hand in his. I do understand, Mia. And I respect you for making this choice. It can't be easy. We sat there for a moment, both aware of the connection between us, but knowing now wasn't the time to explore it. Will you be okay? I asked, suddenly worried about leaving him. Nathan gave me a sad smile. I'll be fine. And who knows? Maybe someday when the timing is right. He left the sentence hanging, and I felt a flutter of possibility in my chest. But I pushed it down, reminding myself of the commitment I'd made to focus on my own growth. As I left the bookstore, I felt a sense of closure. I'd ended things with both Jake and Nathan, not because I didn't care for them, but because I needed to care for myself first.